This may be the world's most lucrative business you've never thought of.
Last year we made $850,000, and this year we're on track to make $2.5 million.
And this guy started it with a kayak, working just a couple days a month.
1 million oysters cost us $9,300. Sales have more than doubled every single year.
In this episode, he reveals how you can do the same.
Because of how much money is in this industry, very few people talk about it openly, but this is the business of the future. 400,000 market oysters, unsellable. Thinking to myself that my whole business has failed. Steal this trick if you get into oyster farming, for sure.
How to get a never-ending stream of customers without paying a dime for ads, and at last, River Karma, the mindset that changed everything. It was stuck there. This must be the most bizarre interview we've ever done, so I'm excited to harvest some oysters, learn the ins and outs of the oyster business, but before we get into that, tell us a little bit about where all of this started.
So this started actually on a dock on the other side of the river. It was a restaurant that was under construction, and the state of North Carolina was looking to stimulate the oyster industry. It was very new back in 2015, 2016 area.
9 years almost.
And the owner of the restaurant, they essentially thought that he would be a good recipient to grow these oysters and sell them. Well, he passed it all along to me, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. Went out from day one, spending the day on the water. I immediately knew that if this was a real business, this is what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life if I could.
What about it that you fell in love with so much? I mean, it seems like a very labor-intensive process.
So being out on the boat essentially allowed me to be my own boss working for him. So he would just send me out on the boat. So I got that autonomy and that freedom of just being out on the water. I didn't grow up on the water, no commercial fishing experience. And from there, I had decided that I was going to start my own business. I needed a spot to start. So my mom, she's got a dock. Started from there. We built all these boats you're seeing and launched them from her dock.
Can you give us an idea of the volume of oysters that you are moving? Give us maybe year one and then what you expect to do at the end of 24.
Our first year of sales was in 2019, and we sold about 36,000 oysters, had about 18,000 in revenue. In 2023, we sold about 1.6 million.
Whoa.
And then this year, we are planting about 8 and hoping to bring 5 million to market.
I'm excited to get out on the water, check out the oyster farm. Let's do it. I'll follow you. You're the boss.
Sounds good. Yes, sir.
All right.
On this way.
So where are we going now?
We are going to what we call the oyster bank. It is our closest lease, so this one is going to be loaded up with oysters that should be ready for the market.
How much time were we actually spending on this thing, Kyle, when it was just a side hustle, right? You had that job at the restaurant.
When I was starting out, I was basically putting in 3-day weekends. And sometimes, like starting on a kayak, you're really tide dependent.
So the oyster farming business is clearly a very profitable, lucrative business, right? And I would think once that wheel is spinning for you and you're doing incredible, why share the secrets with everybody else?
It just really brought positivity back into my life. I mean, I swear, being out here is like therapy for me. It helps me reset, and I think more people need that in their life. And you know, long-term 30-year goal, I would like oysters to be cheaper than chicken.
Quite a lofty goal.
I cannot do that by myself. I actually probably won't even be the one to do it. But if I can be like help in the ladder of that process getting there, I think sharing the information with everybody will help the industry get to that point. Oysters have an incredible environmental impact. They are one of the most sustainable proteins that you can grow.
Interesting.
So the more people that are involved in this, the more sustainable protein that we've got coming to market. And
what do they do to the environment, the ecology? Are they obviously not hurting it in any way? What are they giving back?
So an oyster is a keystone species. That means that the whole river relies on them being there and prevalent in that. Some of our oyster cages, which you'll see, they provide space for small critters to live. It really allows like the shrimp population and the crabs to flourish in this area. Also, fun fact, an adult oyster can filter 50 gallons of water per day.
No way.
And they also sequester nitrogen and carbon. I'm telling you, we can solve a lot of the problems right here in the water with oysters. And I'm betting my career on it.
Now that we're coming up on your leased area, as someone who knows very little about oyster farming, can you help me understand what you look for when choosing the right lease? What it costs? Let's start with that. And anything else you want to bring out in terms of just doing it the right way.
You're going to have your initial application fee with the VMF, the Division of Marine Fisheries. That's going to be a few $100s, and that's going to be a state-by-state basis. So you're probably going to want to reach out to who's ever in charge of your water management. You get a 10-year lease on it from the state, and then you pay $10 per acre of bottom, and then you can rent the water column, which is $100 per acre per year. Let's say we have 20 acres of bottom and top.
Okay.
That's going to be $200 for the bottom and $2,000 for the top. So our total
all
rent
in per month or
per year.
Per year. Oh,
it's
nothing.
very minimal. I believe the reason that it's so minimal is because of the environmental impacts that we're causing. We're being subsidized in that way.
Anything else that we need to look for?
So you're going to be looking for, you're going to want to walk your lease, understand the ground of the lease that you're on. Also, another thing very important for the logistics game is just look how close we are from our dock to the lease. I mean, you want to make it where you are, and that will cut down on your time, cut down on your expenses, cut down on everything. Look to see if there are oysters growing in that area. That's a key thing.
All right, well, let's go check out the actual oyster bed. What are we doing there? We're actually harvesting oysters ready to go to the restaurants?
Yep, so these are going to be pulled out of bottom cages, and these oysters are headed off to Savannah.
Sweet, I can't wait to check it out. Whether you're looking for an idea, have an idea, or have an established business, the UpFlip Academy has everything you need to get to the next level. Some business owners there to help you along the way, and world-class mentors there to answer your questions that you cannot find on Google. I highly recommend checking out the UpFlip Academy, especially as the first, you know what, actually I'm not going to ruin the surprise for you. Why don't you go check it out for yourself in the description below.
All right, let's harvest some cages. You're on drill?
Yes, sir.
All righty.
So you just hooked up a cage.
Yep.
These are ready to go?
Oh yeah, these will be our markets ready to go.
I think I know what I'm doing. You tell me to slow down or not?
All the way, crank it.
Crank it, okay.
Yep.
Just press and hold.
Yes, sir.
We got some cash coming out of here.
Oh yeah.
Good?
Yes, sir. And I'll bring her right here.
All right.
And bada bang.
Sweet. Tell us about your first ever sale and how did that come about?
So the first ever oysters, we really didn't know much about what to sell them for. So we looked and we basically were trying to compete with wild prices. So it was about 50 cents an oyster. We sold 400 of them for $200. We cleaned them with toothbrushes.
Yeah.
And we sold them to Blue Ocean Market. Told them, hey, I got a product. They said, we'll give you a try. Because at that time, farmed oysters were not very popular in this area. Huh. Nobody had essentially heard of them or really grown them that much.
And it's only, what, 4 years ago and that's changed that much?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
okay.
You want one?
Right now?
I can.
All that water I drink, swallow it?
Shoot, and then, no.
Wow. So how often do you harvest then?
As far as harvesting, we harvest per order. Every oyster that we harvest is already sold.
Oh,
so
wow.
We have nothing sitting in the fridge. Typically our harvest schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when we get the bulk of the majority of our oysters out. On a per cage basis, you can put 1,200 oysters in here at 50 cents. That's $600 a cage.
I was gonna say, yeah, per cage, so you're looking at about $6.
Just a more honest, like, because everything doesn't work right in farming. So let's say, I would say if they say $600, I'd say $400, just to build in your budget. You know, like you can essentially get $400 per cage.
Between $400 to $600.
So if you can do 10 cages a day, 20 cages a day, $4,000 to $8,000, you know?
Dang.
And they're quick. You saw how fast we got that up?
Yeah.
So essentially what we'll do, we'll pick the cages up, we'll take a stack of 8 to 10. This boat can actually hold 20.
All right.
But then we'll bring it right to our processing facility that we were at, and bada boom, and we'll get them in the fridge as quickly as possible.
All right, well, let's go check out the nursery where basically everything starts, right?
Yep, I think we've got about 5 million oysters on that lease right now.
Wow, all right, let's go. So did you start with a boat like this, or what did that look like initially?
Initially, I started with a kayak.
Kayak?
Just a very small kayak. I would actually come from land right there.
How would you lift a basket like that with a kayak?
Only at low tides. At low tide, all of our bottom cages are almost exposed.
I see.
So you can get out, a lot of manual labor,
in the mud.
You lift them up, and you learn a lot by that.
What was your cost to start, at least at that level? Kayak, you know, not fences, cages and so on.
So I had about 100,000 oysters and 20 cages. That was about $5,000 investment.
Talk to us about that moment in time when you realized, you know what, this is actually worth going in full time. What was going through your head? What did you see? The potential and so on. Help us understand.
So it really hit me when I went into my first fine dining restaurant, and I was able to see the consumers eating the oyster. I was seeing that people were willing to pay the price for oysters. So once I saw that there was a potential customer base that were really interested in oysters, I was like, this is probably something we should pursue.
Gotcha. What's one interesting customer base that if we heard about it, we'd all be shocked?
One really interesting customer that we potentially have been working towards slowly is vegans. These oysters...
They don't touch protein like that.
Well, so when you find out the environmental impacts that these oysters can cause, mixed with the fact that oysters do not have a central nervous system, so they do not feel pain.
They don't feel pain. Eat them.
Yes, we have had a few vegans that are starting to enjoy oysters.
Oh man, come on. Creating content to grow your business is great, but cracking the value of that content by turning audiences into customers, well, that's easier said than done. If you're an entrepreneur looking to make the most out of your content, you need the right tools. That's why there's Kajabi. Kajabi is the all-in-one platform perfect for creators and entrepreneurs looking to launch, grow, and manage their business from one convenient location. With Kajabi, you can whip up and sell online courses, host podcasts, build websites, and manage your marketing without breaking a sweat. And guess what? Kajabi doesn't take a cut of your revenue. Every shiny pearl you earn stays with you. Their user-friendly tools and resources are designed to take the hassle out of your entrepreneurial journey, which means more time for you to focus on creating the next big thing and less time shucking. So don't be shellfish. Share your content with the world and let Kajabi help maximize your potential. Right now, Kajabi is offering a free 30-day trial to start your business if you go to kajabi.com/UpFlip, kajabi.com/UpFlip, and join the creators and entrepreneurs who have made over $7 billion. Blitz time with Kyle. Kyle, first question. Do you think that the taste difference of oysters grown in different locations is noticeable?
Absolutely. They call that terroir. So it's similar to wine's terroir. So the territory they're grown in basically determines the flavor.
That's
the
so
water
cool.
we're grown in determines our flavor.
Nice. What's your favorite way to eat oysters?
Raw.
All right. What's the most surprising thing about oysters in general?
How fast they grow. The exponential growth is unbelievable. You have to see it to believe it.
What's the most challenging part of being your own boss?
There's none. It's freedom. You live and die by your own decisions, and I guess that's the toughest part.
All right.
You have to be responsible for your own decisions.
Did you ever imagine yourself doing something so bizarre for so much money in your youth?
Absolutely, I did. I didn't know what it was going to be, but something.
Something. Okay. What motivates you to start your day?
There are oysters in cages that need to get sold.
And then last one. If you could have dinner with any entrepreneur, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Elon Musk, just because he's doing some really cool stuff.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Boom. So why have both the floating cages and then you have the bottom?
So there's different benefits and different pros and cons for each. So with the bottom gear, we'll start our babies on the bottom. This is basically just so they're in a safe, secure area. As they go through that first tumble, we will move them up to these floating bags. The reason that we move to these floating bags is you can see the wave action is slowly shaping them. So basically they're in their shaping phase.
Yeah.
From here, they will be shaped enough for us to put them back into the bottom cages for final grow out. Some of the reasons we finish with bottom cages are for security, also scaling at harvest time. It's very hard to harvest 10,000 oysters out of floating bags and just unclipping them. The time that goes into that just makes it not great for harvesting, especially when we got time and temp to worry about in the summer months.
Gotcha. What are some costly mistakes that you can go through in this industry?
Picking the wrong lease. Let's say you pick the wrong lease in October, you put all the labor into it, and then summertime comes, massive biofouling experience like we had, you can lose everything that you've invested in that lease.
All right, let's get out of here. It's getting a little gnarly. Let's go check out the oyster tumbler. I saw that big machine. I want to see how it works, and we'll just continue on.
Sounds good, man.
So tell us a little bit about this unit here. What's it called and what does it do? I'm totally new to all this.
Okay, so this is what we call an oyster tumbler. This will sort them by size and it'll also clean them at the same time. So what we'll do is we'll take some of these dirty bags that we recently...
This is where the baby started.
Yep, and then we'll pour them up into here onto the oyster tumbler.
And basically what you're doing is you're rotating them, cleaning them, and then you're putting them in bigger baskets where they can get more room to grow.
Yes, yes.
Gotcha.
So every time they move up in cycle, they'll go into a larger aperture hole.
Gotcha.
But so essentially you can see we have smaller holes here and it leads into larger holes and then it'll lead into basically bigger stuff that comes out. So we'll just kind of load in like this.
And then it basically filters through, and here's what we got here, right?
Yes.
Look at that.
So the smaller oysters that fit through those holes will come out this side, and these will go in back into a clean 4mm bag,
right?
Because they aren't big enough yet. If we move over here, these are essentially a little bit larger, and these will go into our 9mm floating bag. Bada boom.
All right. You guys just got a brand new hotel room for the next, what, week or two? Or?
So this is going to be 6 to 8 weeks from here until we see these guys again. we'll essentially tumble them up, and they will sit on top of the water column, just like this.
Gotcha.
And that's the step from baby to floating bag.
All right, so this is where they actually start, you guys, by the way. How many oysters do we have in here, Kyle?
So this is an estimated 100,000. We got 1 million in the mail yesterday, and I put aside 100 to show you kind of what we got going on here. We get them at 2 millimeter from a company out of Virginia, and they actually come just basically in a box overnighted to us.
That's crazy. And they grow these in a lab? Is that where it starts?
Basically
like
a lab.
Farm.
It's a lab. It's indoor facility. This is essentially probably close to 5,000 oysters.
Wow. What did you pay for that delivery?
So 1 million oysters cost us $9,300.
9,300.
But if we buy them at 6 millimeter, similar to the size that you just saw in the tumbler, 25,000.
Whoa.
And it takes us from here to there 10 days.
To get from here to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saving $15,000 by starting
that's
right here.
When I was explaining the growth, the exponential growth of this, you just see it when you're looking at this stuff.
Why would somebody want to spend an extra 15 just to be able to harvest quicker?
Because they're so small. You do not want to, they can be easily damaged. They're highly sensitive. So that's some reason.
Sensitive little critters.
Yeah, that's a reason why a lot of people go right into 6. They think it's a much hardier oyster. And when we were started, that's where we were told to go. But with experience, you just realize like that cost savings, you know, is really
adds up. Okay.
So this is a good trick. Steal this trick if you get into oyster farming, for sure.
Can you walk us through the year-over-year revenue? Start with year 1 and where you expect to be for 24.
Okay, in year 1, our revenue was about $18,000 in 2019. In 2024, we did about $850,000 in revenue.
Quite the jump, wow.
Yeah, our margins are basically around 50 to 60% on those oysters. So essentially it costs us about 21 to 23 cents to get a market,
to produce one?
to get an oyster to market.
And you're selling it, what, 50, 55, 60 cents?
Yes.
Gotcha. Is that a good deal in this industry?
In terms of our pricing, we found that we can be in more restaurants at a lower price, which is also a good way to market your oysters, actually. So typically you'll find wholesale oysters at around $80 to $1.20.
Really? Wow,
and,
pop.
We're really trying to be on the lower end of that. And if you can get it directly from us and you buy in large enough scale, we can get it down there to 60 cents.
So you're not only being competitive, but you're offering the best value and the best quality.
Right, so it's our 3 Ps. It's the price, which we're competitive on and we can beat anybody. Our product is the freshness, so we try and get it to you as fresh as possible. And then the people. Working with us is super easy. We stand by all of our product and we want everybody to make as much money on this as possible.
That's cool. Let me go back because you didn't mention the 2024 revenue. Where do you expect to be for 24?
So ideally it would be anywhere from 1.6 to 2.5 million. We've actually planted over 5 million oysters this year already.
Wow.
And we're kind of on track to do about 10 million.
You're aiming high this year.
Absolutely, why not?
Did you ever have moments of doubt? Give us a specific experience as you continue to grow, scale this business.
And we had just discovered a new lease. The state had just given it to us. It was on a perfect, beautiful sandbar. We basically had moved our whole business to this new lease. And then we learned a very valuable lesson. Spat, wild spat, which is small oysters attached to our whole crop, which is basically like a biofouling event, which makes your oysters unsellable. 400,000 market oysters, and they got covered. I was actually out on the lease walking around this beautiful little island thinking to myself that my whole business has failed. And really from that moment that I was gonna be going back to working for somebody else.
No way.
And
what got you through?
Yeah, I did some simple math in my head. I said, hey, if I can afford to pay myself $15 an hour, don't give up. We lost the majority of the crop, so the profit for that year was pretty much gone. But I really enjoyed what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, look, as long as I can get a minimum wage from this, I did some funny math in my head just to trick myself
Nothing
into
on
thinking,
paper,
just to convince myself that I could do this. And at that point I was tested and I was like, look, you know, I'm gonna keep going. And that was such a valuable lesson. We've used that for spotting leases now, which is just, it turned out one of our biggest problems turned into one of our biggest assets. Now, learning how to spot these leases.
Right. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like?
You want to go out and really explore the lease space first. You want to know what kind of ground you're dealing with it. Is it heavy mud? Is it heavy sand? Is it a mixture? Also, study the environment. Walk around your area and pick up oysters on the ground. See, is there spat on these oysters? There's harmful types of fouling that you'll learn about in the future. And if you can see that fouling in an area, you're typically going to want to avoid that area. Also, really key, have multiple lease locations. That's how you protect yourself from this.
If Kyle's story inspired you, then hit that subscribe button and give us a like. It not only shows us that you guys have enjoyed the episode, but it also helps us grow and bring on more incredible entrepreneurs like this dude. Can you give us a breakdown of this cost, the machine?
Okay.
Do I need it to get going? Do I need it to get started in oyster farming?
So you do not need this machine if you're aiming to be a small hobby farmer, like really kind of a boutique, maybe anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000 oysters a year. But anything over that, I would highly recommend one of these machines. The cost on this is about $18,000. It's a significant investment, but the amount of efficiency that it provides, it's unmatched.
What's your advice to new entrepreneurs getting into oyster farming who want to buy machines, don't have a lot of capital? Is there financing options for stuff like this? How would you go about it with your experience?
Oyster farming. So we are allowed to tap into the USDA.
Oh yeah.
The USDA is a great source of funding for anything with food production. For any other entrepreneurs, you can use family. I borrowed $5,000 from my grandpa. But if you are lucky enough to be in the farming industry, the USDA has got great starter loans for everybody. And
so you can get a loan on machines.
You can get a loan on
anything to operate a business.
Yes, and they are really encouraging, you know, so they're much better to deal with than a bank.
Right.
And I would also recommend, for getting into this kind of industry, find a farmer that would like some help. Learn from them, and if they have extra space, sometimes we allow farmers to start on our lease in a small area,
get going
as they're putting in the paperwork, and that is really probably the most successful route you're going to want to go to get into this industry.
So we've just checked out the equipment you need to manage an oyster farm, right?
Yes.
Let's go show you guys the equipment you need to actually harvest oysters and get them into the restaurants. Let's go check it out.
Perfect.
What does this machine run for cost-wise? Because the tumbler was pretty pricey.
Yeah, so this machine right here comes in multiple pieces, but this particular setup is about $32,000.
Dang, show us how it works.
Okay, so we'll essentially take our oysters that we've harvested. I've got a small amount of semi-dirty oysters. What we'll do, we'll take much fuller bushel bags, and then we'll take them and you kind of evenly just have somebody sit here.
You got to do some repositioning.
Yes, it does a really good job of just getting that first layer of mud off of there.
Yeah, so this is basically a fancy shower for oysters. You know,
and right here, if I turn on the count mechanism, it'll count us out basically a bag of 100.
Now, honestly, they need more washing, right?
They will, so you'll see how we finish that with the washing. But basically, there's essentially a laser here that every time it goes up, it counts. And then when it gets to 100 count, which this is actually 100, it'll flip and it'll go into the other side. So you can have a constant motion of oysters being counted. So essentially you got your 100 count bag, boom, take it. There's one more process that we'll do to clean it, and we'll get right to that.
What's your monthly overhead right now, like bare minimum to keep operating, get everybody paid, cover your costs before profits?
Yeah, so our labor runs anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 a week, which is essentially $16,000 to $20,000 a month.
You're paying them fair.
Oh yeah, so this is such a hard job that I want them to see a career potentially in this.
What other costs, expenses? You got fuel, you got boats, you got the house.
So about $6,000 to keep this operating, just the property and everything, and with gas and ropes and such. Yeah, so about $25,000 a month.
Gotcha. Okay. So how in the world were you doing what we just saw without the machines to start with?
So funny enough, our first sale, we actually washed them with toothbrushes. It was 400 oysters. Me and my buddy Phil washed each oyster with a toothbrush. We quickly realized that was not the case. That was not going to be scalable. So we pivoted kind of into pressure washers. All the oysters are clean when they go in the bag. Now, if you were just to count them in the bag, you have a tough time getting to the center of them to clean them.
Right.
This makes it a lot quicker on the back end for pressure washing.
All right, it's time to try some delicious oysters. Let's go check it out. All right, as Creighton prepares us a delicious meal, thank you, Creighton, chef.
You're welcome.
Let's dive into the different species of oysters. What makes different ones more or less expensive, if there is such a thing?
There are many more species, but there are really only 5 species that are sold commercially for consumption.
Okay.
We specifically grow the Coast Oyster virginica, which is an eastern oyster. And it's funny, the oyster actually takes on the flavor of wherever it is grown. What kind of bottom's on it, if it's sandy bottom, muddy bottom. Also, basically, what kind of algae you've got growing in the area. The seagrass that we've got, that brings a flavor to it. An oyster can taste completely different from one side of the river to the mouth of the river. As far as more expensive, some oysters take a long time to grow. Our oyster will take about 12 months. They've got small little cushy oysters, but it takes about 4 years.
Wow. What logistics are involved with delivering oysters to restaurants, other customers, and specifically what systems do you have in place to make sure that that happens well?
Okay, so with oysters, everything is time and temp based. So in the summertime, you've got 5 hours to get the oysters into the refrigerator. In the wintertime, you actually have 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
Typically because it's cold enough that, you know, they'll stay healthy. So when they go into the cooler, we either directly to consumer, we'll sell them directly out of that cooler to the restaurant. It's mobile on wheels. Having a mobile trailer was a good move for us. And then also we have distributors that will come and pick it right up out of the driveway, and then they will take it, store it under temp to the restaurants.
Gotcha.
And at every exchange of oysters, there is a stamp that requires both parties to check the temperature of the cooler and then the one it's going into. So
is that more of a state law requirement?
Yes.
All right, well, let's try some oysters. I'm sure there's plenty of them in there. We'll show you here in a second. Give us the 5 perfect steps to getting that thing opened.
So you're gonna get your oyster, preferably a fat belly. Take it right here, hold it down. You're gonna come in and you're gonna wiggle it in. You're gonna wiggle. We call this the lollipop. Once you've got it locked in, boom, boom. The next is just the key turn. You give it a little key turn. That opens it and loosens it.
And he's like, no.
The next thing you're gonna wanna do is take it out. You're gonna wipe off any debris. You'll come in, and then you're going to scrape. There's 2 muscles, one on this side, one on that side. Your first cut is gonna be the top one. So you're gonna scrape along the top.
Yeah, the top.
Then you're gonna bring.
Beautiful.
And then?
And?
What is it?
All right, well, let's give this a shot. Give me a little explanation.
So this is scuttle sauce. It's a rice wine vinegar, pineapple, cilantro, and shallots.
This looks amazing. Here's it. Oh,
cheers,
I'm
buddy.
losing all the juice. What do you call the juice in there?
Liqueur.
Liqueur.
Yes.
All right, cheers.
Cheers, bud.
Cheers. Oh, wow. Did you ever think, like, when you started, you ever be where you are today?
No, absolutely not. No. The plan is kind of being built day by day.
Right.
You know.
What about any major breaks along the way?
I got lucky in one sense by picking my name. I accidentally picked a name I called ourselves Big Rock Oysters. We're from a town where there's a massive fishing tournament. It's called Big Rock Fishing Tournament. So we did that to try to like pinpoint our location. Well, we got the trademark registered, and then 6 days later I got a call from Big Rock Oyster out of Massachusetts. Awesome guy. Treated us very fairly.
He wasn't Big Rock at that time.
He was. He had been
was.
Big Rock for decades.
Oh, interesting.
Somehow
he just didn't trademark it.
Somehow. That was our first year, and that we were able to sell the name just for a small amount of money. And just as when you're a startup, just any capital to help, you know.
Little boost.
Little boost. That was one of our lucks.
That's cool.
Find and Phil was lucky. And then this house. Those are the 3 lucky things that I got.
All right, we got a version 2 of the oysters. What's going on here?
This is just pimento, cheese, and bacon bits. I got it from my boy Joe from Moore's Family Shellfish. This is his recipe.
Cheers, man. Well, earlier we looked at your year-over-year revenue, and you've more than doubled each year, which is phenomenal. It's crazy. Is that normal? Talk to us about some of the secrets that have caused you to go from 36 to 1.6 oysters sold and so on.
Okay, it's basically consistency. Having a consistent relationship with our customers, realizing that we don't want to, you know, make the money off the first sale. We want to make money with you for the long term. Also, we've started to treat this more as a logistics game, and you know, just trying to shorten the span from getting from point A to point B.
So in 2019, you were starting out of your mom's dock.
Yes.
What happened in 2020 where you went from 36 and 19 to 1.6?
2020 was a rough year for everybody. We kind of hunkered down and really focused on learning the farming technique. In 2021, the opportunity to rent this property came available, and we quickly jumped on that. That helped our logistics immensely. And so in 2021 we were renting it, but in 2022 the opportunity came for us to purchase this home, and through the help of the USDA we were able to get ownership of it, and that really allowed us to start investing in the infrastructure of this property, knowing that we would be holding it.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you first started out?
Well, one thing we're trying to change is the barrier to information. So when we started this, there was absolutely no information on this.
That's a good one.
And that was, you just had to go out there and, you know, make the mistakes on your own. Also, some of the barriers are getting that first lease. That is going to be hard. The physicality, I mean, your body has to get used to this. we'll start somebody and in 2 months they have got a completely different physique.
Really?
Yeah,
They're done.
it is. Yeah, they don't go to gyms anymore. You don't go to the gym
Well,
anymore.
we're out here in North Carolina. It is freaking hot.
Oh yeah.
And I cannot imagine doing this from morning till what, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yep, 9 to 5.
This is hard labor, you guys. How many employees do you have currently?
So 4 full-time and then me, so that
Plus
makes
you.
5.
Gotcha.
Yeah, full-time.
That's pretty lean for the production that you're pumping out. I mean, is that typical for an oyster farm to be so lean?
So to be honest, this is kind of uncharted territory. So we really do not know. We have we have 3 part-time people that will kind of come in on their availability. But as it really kind of depends on how many boats you got. You saw we have a 3rd boat going in the back.
Right.
So as soon as that boat's done, we'll be 6 plus me full-time.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of slowly moving into that
2
direction.
per scuttle. So what are you paying them if you're willing to share? Like
$20 an hour to
here in North
start.
Carolina?
$20 an hour to start. And
If they last long enough and
if
stay
they last
here,
long, it can
what's
go
the potential?
28, 30. If I can sell my 2 million oysters per quarter, they get a $10,000 bonus.
Wow.
And the math works.
Yeah.
It works, and you know, hopefully it'll keep some guys around.
Yeah, if this stuff is the kind of labor you're into, you can make some serious money here.
Absolutely.
So earlier you mentioned like a powerful marketing strategy that most entrepreneurs overlook. Can you tell us more about that as you're taking these nets out of here? What are we talking about exactly when you mentioned that?
So one of the most powerful marketing strategies that came kind of as a surprise to us was lowering our price.
You call that marketing?
You know, it really was. When we lowered our price in certain markets, other chefs found out, and we started getting calls, basically, like you were saying, an endless supply of customers just based on our price.
What about other competitors or farmers frowning on that? Aren't you obviously undercutting them? They're selling it for 80 to a buck. You're doing 52 to 60 cents.
Yes.
Which is a wonderful deal to me as the end user.
Yes.
Or consumer.
Yes. Right now, it's kind of, it's the gear that we're using. It's the bottom cages. And I'm more than happy to show them exactly how we're doing it. And it's just kind of, if you're at 80 cents to $1, you're not going to sell 10 million oysters a year. You know?
Okay. So what are we doing here? We're just checking these guys out?
Yeah, so this is going to be, these have been sitting out here for a little bit. This is a floating bag. You can see how it's actually kind of shaped them.
Yeah, they look beautiful.
They
Little
are
guys.
beautiful.
Look at that.
So we call these fat belly oysters, and you can kind of tell, like, it's just like popping out that belly a little bit more.
So is everybody doing what you're doing, or is everybody start with the bottom and finish with the bottom?
Yeah, so most of the time it's, if you're a bottom cage, you're all in bottom cages. If you're in floating, you're all in floating farm. So
What made you go this route?
We were in bottom cages, and then we saw everybody had the prettier oysters, so we went to floating. And then I saw all the problems that floating had, and I said, I want to take the benefits of that.
Interesting.
Shaping them at small size.
Yeah.
And the reason that we only keep them small here is because you can see all the weight that it could create by having heavy. So if you put markets in here, this line is going to be extremely heavy, and that could pull out your anchors.
Oh yeah.
That can cause a lot of problems of cutting the line. So
Man.
we keep a light bag out there and small stuff, and we shape them up to about 1.5 inches, and then we'll put them back through that tumbler and back into a cage.
Awesome. Well, they look beautiful, and they definitely taste really good.
Yeah.
So you have a fairly large active base of followers on Instagram.
Yes.
Let's talk about what your strategy there is as far as business goes.
Okay.
What are you doing?
We do a Happy Tuesday post every Tuesday, and the reason that we do that is because the chefs are doing their ordering on Tuesdays. And then fairly shortly after, I would start seeing messages from chefs. It was just a reminder that we were there. We try and use the shorts really to bring our customers and the people following along with us during the day.
Right.
And it's a really good way to engage with the community, and it's free advertising.
Right. What other platforms are you utilizing to get your brand out there?
At the beginning of 2024, I made a goal to start a YouTube channel. We're looking to get more into long form content, really to be able to explain the background. We had seen other farming channels, but no oyster channels yet.
All right, I'm just curious to ask, I've been waiting all day, what is this river karma philosophy thing all about?
So river karma is basically, you're dealing with Mother Nature. So there's a lot of uncontrolled events that can happen. Basically, you can use any edge that you need out there, and one that we found is river karma. It's basically just doing good in general, and you will find the benefit in your cages. You will find your oysters are healthier, and we really subscribe to that. And that's how we've gotten here. So
cool. Thanks for sharing. Who's given you the best advice or been a mentor to you who just incredibly impacted your growth and you as a person, an entrepreneur?
So that would be my grandpa, hands down.
That's
he
cool.
is 96 years old and still as sharp as a
wow.
tack.
Good for
I
him.
talk to him every week.
What advice specifically, besides what you just shared, has your grandpa given you?
Sales. He really taught me to understand what your customers want. He also told me whenever you meet with a customer, teach them something every time.
About what you're doing?
Yes, if you can teach them something, they will make time for you when you show up. If you're just there to sell them something and leave, but if you can provide them value every single time you show up, just a little piece of, they learn something new about the oyster farming, they're excited to see you the next time.
That's good, because we can take that in any business.
A lot of customers are really interested in, you know, just getting more information, and being able to provide that shows that you have value.
You seem to know most of your competitors, which I think is a great thing. The question that I have is, how do you view them? As competitors, as someone you collaborate with in this industry?
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So collaboration is a great word. I think of the other oyster farmers, they're really friends. We get together a few times a year for events, nonprofits.
Shuck some oysters.
Shuck some oysters.
Obviously.
With being such a new industry, there's all these little tips and stuff that we're learning, you know, like the small oysters. So I'll take that information and I'll very freely pass it along to them. And then they'll notice something that I've got going on, maybe with floating gear. And it's really a give and take.
Is it? Okay.
And the opportunity to go inland will keep us from being butting heads for a very long time. The Cleveland, the Oklahomas, and the Chicagos are landlocked. And those are huge opportunities for us to collaborate with so my competition, I'm actually in talks with a few farms right now, trying to plan a route for both of us to go into Oklahoma City. You know, you can't do it all by yourself.
How do you manage and motivate your team? And like, who in the world would want to work in this environment? Like, what kind of people are we looking for when it comes to hiring the right team?
Okay, so with managing and motivating, it's a lot of communication. I kind of really ask how they feel, you know, because this is a very labor-intensive job. And how we motivate them is we kind of do a profit sharing. And then also I tell them our goals. You know, I let them know the end mission so everybody can kind of work towards it. They get to see us pulling out more oysters. They get to see us planting more oysters. And they, you know, they get to be a part of something that, you know, is growing and is something new, and it's kind of exciting. You don't have to be strong, you don't have to be it's all positive attitude.
That's cool.
Because when you run into problems,
pivot, shift,
yeah,
adapt,
and just smile.
Boom. That's what we do here. If I wanted to start an oyster farm today, I don't know anything about it, but I've always wanted to be part of that industry.
Absolutely.
Give us a blueprint, step-by-step process on going about it.
Okay, so you're gonna wanna find a farm in your area that's hiring, or if you're super interested in it, go work for them for free for a couple of weeks. See if you're worth the snuff, they'll probably hire you. Everybody's looking for labor in this business. I would go there, then go down to your DMF office and start the process with just talking to the state about getting a lease. That is the first.
It takes a while.
Yes, because the lease that you get is going to determine the gear that you use. So you don't even look at the gear until you know the lease. So find a mentor, work on his land, and talk to the DMF, the Division of Marine Fisheries, about getting a lease.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for breaking down so simple.
Yeah.
That's where you start. Over 50% of our viewers say that the fear of failure is the reason they won't pursue a business, or they just can't. What do you tell them? You started young, started something totally new.
I tell them, when you look back on it, the fear of not starting is way worse. When you get to the end and you didn't try, that is the real fear. That's the real fear.
So when you get to your 70s and 60s, you're saying you're going to regret the fact that you didn't try.
Right. That is
that's
a guaranteed failure.
And failing.
That's a guaranteed failure right there.
Well said. Last, what kind of piece of advice, Kyle, would you like to leave with our audience? It could be really anything.
So I got some advice from Murder Point Oyster Farms 5 years ago, and he said, you get out exactly what you put in. And I found that to be true. So the more you put out, the more you'll get back.
Yeah, so not only, if I can piggyback off that, not only do you watch these videos and learn from it, right, but actually put in the work.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people get stuck in just watching, overanalyzing, and not executing.
Yes. So. And even when you don't think the effort is seen or shown, that's when it is most important.
Keep going.
Yes.
Awesome. Wonderful advice. Do you enjoy farming but would rather do something on the ground? Well, you can't miss episode 194 with a farmer who started growing mushrooms out of his garage. Make sure to check it out, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.